I'll try not to be as biased as I possibly can, but I would say that like an overall great sort of sport, touring, super sport package would be this bike here. And the reason why I pick, there's a lot of different reasons why I chose this bike. And I've probably said this before in threads and maybe in one or two videos, but I'll say it, reiterate the point again. I'm a huge fan of single and twin cylinder bikes. And I've usually been of the mindset or of the persuasion that any more than 2 cylinders was a waste, and I have to sort of somewhat retract that statement, because the 3-cylinder has proven to sort of be the best of all worlds, really. Triumph, whoever was thinking about it, was thinking about it intelligently. The 3-cylinder keeps the bike narrow enough where it's not, it doesn't get too side heavy in one respect or another. So if you're a smaller or a lighter rider, you're not going to have a hard time at all handling this bike. It's probably one of the reasons Jason DeSalvo loves this bike so much. When I got a chance to talk to him at the International Motorcycle Exposition in New York City. The other thing about this bike, which is very unique, I guess. If you look at the Speed Triple and you look at of course the Street Triple, it's abundantly apparent that to some of us who appreciate aesthetics of the way a motorcycle looks, because a lot of us will buy something just based on the way it looks and not take into account any of the other features or aspects of the bikes. A stereotype of women has been that they're very impulsive buyers. Well, guys are too, with respect to looks. I mean, if they don't educate them or school themselves on what it is they're buying, they said, yeah, I bought it because it looked great, and then of course they end up owning it, whatever it is. It's a car, or it's a article of clothing, or whatever the heck it is, and then they're a few days, weeks, months later, they're not happy with it because the quality wasn't there, or there was something just not right with the product. Well, Triumph has gotten the entire formula figured out, in my opinion. They've taken everything into account. They've taken aesthetics into account. One of the things I want to talk about with respect to looks, the way the geometry of the bike is set up, in terms, just like from an aesthetic point of view, this has nothing to do with handling characteristics, but just from an aesthetic point of view, if you look at where the headlight sits and where the tank sits, and then you have this sculpted out seat, and then the perch comes right back up to about, it's at the same angle. It's just slightly below the top of the tank, but the angles are like right there, consistently all through the bike. Now, if you've looked at some of the knockoffs and stuff, there's something not right. Like Hyosung, has attempted to do like naked bikes, and then there's a few others now. Of course, the new FC9. But if you look at this bike, a side profile like I'm doing here, and you look at the angle, like where the headlight sits, the tank, and then the rear of the and where the perch is, the line is just, it's this like one consistent line that goes all the way through, from the angle of the tank to the rear fairing and everything. You got you got the front of the bike, the center of the bike, and then you have the rear of the bike, but everything is kind of like along the same lines. Every time I get involved with something. Alright, so again, from the front, the center to the rear of the bike, you have this consistent line that goes all the way through. and so it ties the bike together, so it looks like one complete unit. When you've seen other naked bikes, when you've seen other naked bikes, you've seen this sort of botched attempt. It's almost as if they just say, let's put a frame and let's just make this a naked bike. And it's sort of like the aesthetics of the bike is kind of a secondary thought as opposed to a primary consideration of the way the bike looks. And that's one of the reasons why I've not found any of the other nakeds attractive. Kawasaki has done a fairly decent job, but you know, to me, it's not a real Street Fighter. And I just, if you've watched or if you've looked at some of my comments in the threads, I've made the comments that Kawasaki, and here's the ironic thing about all this. My very first motorcycle was a Kawasaki, okay? But I'm talking about the Kawasaki's of, like, you know, the 1970s, mid to late 1970s to early 1980s. And the GPZ, if you like did just a little bit of work to like the GPZ 550, that bike looked sick. I mean, it looked really just sick. And I had it set up. I had the drag bars on it. I had some of the seat foam shaved out, and then I had a nice Kirker exhaust on it, chrome. And the bike, I wish I had pictures of it, and I probably do, buried away somewhere. But it looked really great. It looked just like a real Street Fighter, a really nice naked Street Fighter bike, or what today they call Street Fighters, but it was just a naked sport bike back then. So I guess I've just been a huge fan of naked sport bikes / Street Fighters, because to me, I don't like covering the bike up. If you have stuff to look at, you want to look at it. The motor is something really nice to look at. The way they've finished out all of the screws, you know, marking out where all of the coverings go over the parts or portions of the motor. You know, there's subtle little things that you see. I think, in my opinion, I think Triumph hit a home run with the exhaust. I have found few to any motorcycle manufacturers that have actually been able to get an exhaust on a bike looking right, which is why a lot of guys just basically dump the stock exhausts for an aftermarket exhaust, because the OEM exhausts on most bikes look horrific. Or, you know, they look horrific with a combination of not sounding very good or not making the bike sound very good.
Subscribing to this channel is greatly appreciated. It's all in your head.
What will grow cause you can't make straight? That's the price that you've gotta pay. Do yourself a favor and pack your bags. Buy a ticket and get on the train. Buy a ticket and get on the train.